Today we're going to start off with some Metrology.net training. And in this video series, we want to show you how to create test packages using the HTML interface. And we're going to do all of our training around a 340450 DMM. All right, so I created this training around a 340450. So I always like to start out with these learning objectives. So when we put this together, this was about 6 years ago. What we want to do is hit an instrumentation information overview, how we do groupings. We want to talk about test packages and test points. We want to talk about instrument settings, sustainable automation, how we do 17025. And then it was built around a 340450 and a transmelt. So I want to hit the big picture of Metrology.net, and a lot of you have seen this. But the idea behind this is we want to take this technology stack that we have, our test points, our test process, the standard and the UT configurations, measurements, uncertainties, pass, fail, and results. And we wanted to get that stack into something that became interchangeable, to where Metrology.net isn't built to be a silo system. It can actually work with other systems that are out there. And there's some companies who've started playing with integrating it with other systems. So the core idea behind this is that we can take a test point and we can add data to that test point. So when we look at a test point, the core data is going to be the nominal value, the upper and lower limit, the unit of measure. That's typically the minimum that you need in any test point. And then we can start adding things to it where we can get very domain specific. So the AC example is that we can start adding these ideas of parameters, where we're adding the voltage, which is 10 volts, the frequency, which is 10 kHz. We can add the range and we can add the impedance. And that makes it extremely flexible. So if we're working with an O-scope, we can use O-scope settings, volts per division, time-based, trigger, channel. We can infinitely expand these name value pairs because they're attached to the test points. They're not the test point itself. So then we can continue with this and we can add data to it while we're taking our measurement. So our measurement repeatability, and then we can pass that data down to our uncertainty calculator, passing that data down to our pass-fail analysis. And when we look at results, that's really where we store it once we're done with the calibration. And the idea behind this is that we can use a calibrator itself, a calibrator monitored by another device, or we could use a multi-channel calibrator, and we could go in and calibrate all of these devices because we're able to have this kind of flexibility in how we do things. And the flexibility comes from, instead of making a driver for our calibrator or our reference standard and making those interchangeable, what we did in Metrology.net is we made the unit under test flexible. And by making the unit under test flexible, now I only have to deal with these 5 major things in here. So I have to deal with the reset of the flexible unit under test, the setup of it, the output on, output off, and take a measurement. So that covers about 95% of all the calibrations that we do. So the first part of this is we're going to cover creating product lines and make models and options. So that's the first part that you have to do before you can create a test package. You have to know the make model information and the options that you're going to use when you create that test package. So I'm started off with some questions out here, some questions and answers, and you guys can put this in the chat up here. I'll look at the chat and keep track of the answers. But the idea behind the question here is, if you had to calibrate a 34450 in your calibration lab, and it's a 5.5 digit meter, how many standards in your calibration lab would you have to have or do you have that could do that work? So, and you guys can just pop those in the chat or say them out loud if you want to. So I've got, and you're going to write your automation specific to your standard. You would have to write 4 or more of these procedures in other languages. Do if you're going to add this with the user interface, and we'll cover doing the spreadsheets a little bit later, but we wanted to enable everything in the user interface so that anybody can come in on any one of the platforms and they can start adding things into Metrology.net. So if you go up to the top under System Data and you click on Models, underneath the models, you're going to get this list of product lines, and you can add a product line. So for this 34450, we had to add the Agilent product line. Okay. And one of the things that I do that's very different is I call them product lines instead of manufacturer, because as you start normalizing out the data, I discovered that Sears is not the manufacturer of the product line Craftsman. So in the US, we would have a lot of torque wrenches, which are Craftsman's torque wrenches, which was a product line from Sears, but they were never the manufacturer. So as we tried to put the data in there, that created problems. Another example is going to be Fluke and Hart Scientific. You might have Hart Scientific items that are now owned by Fluke, but Fluke just sees them as a product line that they haven't moved to the Fluke name yet. So this allows you to kind of do this abstract grouping with this concept of a product line. So in Metrology.net, we start with a product line, which is semi-synonymous with manufacturer. So then underneath the product line, you're going to have this little drop down, and you're going to get this add button. And now you can come in and add the model number. And I think it's good practice to add the model number exactly how it appears on the front of the instrument. And if there's a description on the front of the instrument, put that description inside of Metrology.net, so technicians aren't as confused when they come in and see these things. So then underneath the product line for this example, or underneath the model, we're going to come in and click the options button. And this is going to expand out. And what we came up with in Metrology.net that we think is good practice is putting in the cal intervals, so that now when you load in a meter, the user can put the cal interval that meter is calibrated at. And the way we built this is we built it to where the 1 year cal interval is the default, but you could set it to a 90-day cal, a 1 year cal, or other types of things to choose your test points when they come. And you can go down the list of affect the calibration data points, because we're going to select calibration data points on complex instruments based on those options. So Scott out there is calibrating multifunction calibrators. And when he's got a 5500 in for cal, he may have an S3 SC option, or he may have an S6 option. Those would be options that he would put inside of here. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to create a model group. And model groups are core to one model. But the idea behind this model group is so that we can build this many-to-many relationship where we can have one test package that we use on many different devices. So internal companies that may want to test their torque wrenches all to 2%, you can go in and you can create that 2% group of all your torque wrenches. And now you can put all your torque wrenches of 150 foot-pounds, 2%, all in that same group. And you don't have to build a custom set of data points for each one of your make models. And that's kind of why we created this model group, is so that we can have these different ways we can do things. We can also have many-to-many relationships of the model group and the manufacturer model that's in that group. So we could have one customer out there who says they want to calibrate the Agilent 34450 per the Air Force TO. So now you can have a test package that's around the manufacturer spec and one that's around the TO. And when they go to build a test package for that 34450, they would see that there's a TO version of it and there's a manufacturer's manual version of it. So that's why we built this way, to give us this flexibility in how we can select our data without having to put a lot of data in the database. So then inside here with the model groups, you've got a plus. Once you've created the model group, you've got a plus. And now you can come in and find the product line or the product line in the model, and you can add it to it. So you could go in and add additional things. So say you had a customer that wanted to check a device to another device's specs, you could add it in that group, and now it's able to come in and you can check it by those specs. So start off with another question. So when you're writing automation, what percentage of the overall work of getting an automated procedure up and running, what percentage of the work is just getting the test points and the upper and lower limits correct? You can go ahead and throw those in the chat or shout them out. So now, me personally, I think it's in the 50 to 80%, because that's usually where I've got to go back in and make tweaks in the procedure. You know, you're off by a decimal point in here, you know, or something like that. So getting those upper and lower limits are quite a bit of the work. So, all right. So in the UI to create a test package, you can just come up here and click on the test packages. You can just reach over here and click add test package. Click on the add test package. And then left-hand corner is you'll come in and give it a test package name. You'll give it a version number. We have switched our versions numbers over to year, month, day. And that makes it easy to see, you know, when was the last time that test package was updated. It's very easy to see from this. Then we'll give it a description, verification procedure, add in some notes like the reference document that we used. And then we've got to select the model group that it applies to. So, and this is a drop-down list. It's going to give you all the model groups, and you just select the one that you just added. Make a change to a test package, right? It's going to immediately go unapproved. So somebody with QA rights to the database has to come in and approve it. And we just did that so that we aren't making changes and then people are going and running them until we've got them completely approved. And then you can see as you select your model group, right, you can see that they change. So this one's around a 34450, but this model group has 4 models inside of it. So we can add to the model group, or we can select the model group that this test package is. So now we can minimize all of that test package info. So we can minimize all the test package info, and now we can start working with the test groups. What we were doing for the training, and when we do in-person training, we have people go through and actually put these data points in. You guys don't have to, but if you want to get the most out of the training, I would recommend doing some of these exercises. The sequence out of the manual was the 3rd test group. Okay, and the sequence number up here, all that's doing is telling Metrology.net what order it's going to hold that in, as all the sequence does. And you have to give me a sequence. If you give 2 sequence numbers the same, the database is automatically going to put the last one that was updated at the top. So if you use the same sequence number, you can do that, but the order will flip back and forth. And it's hard to keep track of which one you're working with because of the order. You have to give it a name, and then you can give it a description. Usually we'll give it a group name, AC volts, and give it a description of AC volts 1-year test points, which is what we're putting in here. And then you're going to select a test type or a test taxon based on what the data points are that you're working with. So this is from all the ones that got added, and you can see that the 6 is inside of here. So, and you can do that as you're adding in all of your test groups. Just add the next one, add the next one, add the next one, till you get all your test groups in for what you're calibrating. And I like to go through and add in all the test groups and then add the test points, is typically how I like to do things, but you guys can do things however you think it's most efficient for you. So now you can expand out this little drop down. So these little icons on the points, and now you're going to add the data point in. So everything that has a red asterisk next to it has to be filled out. Then everything that doesn't, those are things you can leave blank. So at the top, sequence again is going to be the sequence you want this data point to appear in the list. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Step number, this is where if you want to tie it back to a specific reference inside of a written document, like an Air Force TO, you can write in, 4.3.6. And that's where that test point exists inside of that manual. So that's what you would put in here for step number, or you could just do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number of runs, you're going to set that to 1 for most things electrical. What number of runs does is tells Metrology.net when it's building out the test package, add this many of those. So if you're calibrating a torque wrench and the requirement is you got to take 5 points for each, or 5 measurements for each test point, this will allow you to create 1 test point, but Metrology.net will add 5 test points at the creation of the test package so that you can do all 5 of your test points as required. Description isn't required. Test type, this has a drop down. You can do within limits, equal to or within limits, above, below, equal to above, equal to below. There's a whole bunch of options that you can choose in here. And one of the things that happens a lot of times is when this meter reads 98.990, that is a failure because we selected less than or greater than the limits. So remember that if you want this to be a passing point, you have to use the equal to. You'll get prefix drop downs, and then you'll get unit of measure, and then you can put in a modifier. So this would be something that tells the user more about the test that you're using, but it's related to the signal that's put into it. So you wouldn't put the modifier range in here. You'd put the modifier, the frequency, because it's an AC. And then nominal value, upper limit, lower limit. And this format down here, this tells Metrology.net how much resolution it's going to report. So, and then you do that for each one of the data points in here. So this is out of the written procedure. And you can see the first point is 20 hertz. Next point is 45. Next point is 1K. And you would go in and put all of these data points in there. You could also add, see how it's got this little quick check? You could also add in your quick checks, and I'll show you later how you can add a parameter that you might want to do a quick check calibration. So you could do the option of quick check, and then you can do the cal of a quick check when it comes in. So now, once it's done, we lost our approval, right? Because we've made a change to the test package. So now you can go in and do approved by and type in your password, and now the system can be ready for you to come in and collect manual calibration data on this. So next thing we're going to cover is going to be instrument settings and metadata about the test point. So real quick out there, I'll have you guys put these in. What other programming languages you guys know? So these gets used a lot, but I kind of want to get an idea for what languages everybody knows. And the next part is going to be instrument settings. So inside of the instrument settings, this is a parameters button and a pretty much unlimited number of name value pairs. Your limitation is the amount of size on your server that you can put a database into. That's really what your limit is to how many name value pairs you can put up there. You're going to put a range in, and then you're going to put in a volts. What we've started doing is putting in, instead of just range, we'll put in UUT.range just to denote that's the range setting on the UUT, not to be confused with the range setting on a calibrator. So there's some other things that you can put in here that when you're doing your options, that there are your name value pairs, that they may be related to not the settings in the calibration, but they may be related to when they get done. So you can add in things like applies the model, right? So now that test point or that test group will only get added to the work order when you're testing that model number. And then you can add applies the option, where it only gets added when it's that option that's being tested. So you can go in and with a little bit of finagling, go in there and make one test package that can do everything inside of the manual, but logically shrink down to just the test that you're going to do on a 34,465 on a 90-day interval. And then you can add things in here like UUT input, which tells the user where he's going to connect it. And you can see there's a lot of things that we can add in here. So on scopes, you can see when we're doing bandwidth that we've got particular things we want to do in bandwidth. So we can put all of those in and have all of these different things that sort the groups and make the work order generate itself with exactly what we want to test. So, and then again, we can go back in and do the save. And now the test package is able to run in kind of a, you can run it automated, but now it doesn't have a script to control the unit under test. So it'll tell the user to reset the unit under test and set it up for AC voltage. And then when you get to the first test point, it'll say, set the unit up to do this frequency, this voltage, this range. So it'll give generic messaging that the user can set the device up and then manually enter the data. Do you think we'll stick with the GPIB 488 forever? Do you think we'll move into TCP/IP, USB, Bluetooth? And if you know any other ones, you can throw those in the chat as well. VISAScript was created because we needed a simple scripting language to do things. And we've expanded a little bit over time. But as we've done the expansions and things, added more and more features to it, and we're getting ready to do another small update so that we can do debugging inside of it. That's going to be the next thing. But the big thing to note here is when we put this in, we did it as an add a resource. And right now, VISAScript is the only drop-down resource that we can add. In the future, we want to add in manuals and indexes in manuals, so users have the ability to go to that manual and go right to that index in that manual to do things. But right now, the only resource Metrology.net supports is the VISAScript. So once you click on the add a resource and you tell it what it is that you're going to add, because it's a new resource, you get this little thing up here where you can do metrology blocks, or you can edit the code manually right there. And this is kind of what the edit code manually looks like. If you know VISAScript and you know how to use it, or you've got to go in and do a simple change, there's no sense in loading all of the metrology blocks. You can't spell range wrong. You could go in there, edit that, hit save, and do that real quick. The metrology blocks loads up, and there's a lot of things that you can do. You get a save, a show block, a show code. The show block is going to take the data from the code side and bring it over to blocks. And the show code is going to take the block changes and move it over to the code. If you hit the help, you can get this list of all of the things that the VISAScript can do. So inside of the VISAScript, if you're coming from scratch, you've got these individual sections. Then with the section up here, the visas, now you can start grabbing your commands. So you grab the right command, drop it in query, drop the query in, grab the command, drop the command in, give it an OPC question mark. There's actually an error in my slide. And you're going to keep doing that until you get all your VISAScript put together and you have it over here. Now, you can edit on both sides, but you can't edit on both sides at the same time. So if you were to go over here and add the question mark in here, and go over here and add the question mark here, when you do a show block, that's going to take the question mark here, put it over here, but it will delete this. And if you put the question mark here and the question mark here hit the show code, it would overwrite your question mark on this side. So you can't edit on both sides, but you can edit using both sides, just not at the same time. So then again, we could save it. I'm going to jump into one of the sites that I have up, which is my test site. I'll reach in here and grab a 34450. I got to log back in because it logged me out. And I'll pull up this AC voltage one. Actually, let me pull it over here in the test package. So the search over here can do 34445. And apparently my 34450 is unapproved. So probably because we've been in here playing with it. So over here, when I look over here, I can see my 34450 is here. And it just updates that screen. And if I type in the 5, you'll see that I have an Agilent 34450 and a Keysight 34450. So I went back in and added that Keysight 34450 and added that to the model group. And now whether or not they're looking at the Keysight or a Agilent 34450 in front of them, when the technician goes to create a work order, he's going to get the one that he's looking at. So if you click over here, it'll create work order. If you click on the line, it will open the test package editor. So we can do a change. We can edit this and make it an approved test package. And then each one of our groups that we're working with here, right, we can expand those out and look at our data points. We can look at any parameters that are associated with that. And you can see here I've got a UUT input, UUT high-low input front. And then I can look at my individual data points and I can see all of my parameters and I can come in and edit the name and the value. The only place you can edit the name is inside of the test package. At the work order, we won't let you edit the name. And then I can also pull this up and I can click on a row and hit edit. And inside of here, you can see that I have these different types that I can select in here. So you can see there's a whole bunch of types. There's a check if you want the user to just is the unit fully charged? Yes. Are there any damages? There you would do verify why is fail. So are there any damages? The pass answer to that would be no. And then you can also tell it to just put up a reference value or things that you can do inside of here. So then getting to the VISAScript, here you can see that I can edit it right here. And then here you can see I can load metrology blocks. Now, for those people or for those organizations that are going to be self-hosted and they're not going to allow their workstations to get out to the web, metrology blocks does not load presently because there's some web resources it wants to reach out and pull down. So if you put it on an island with no internet connections, this will not work at present. We've got a task order in to get all of that to where it's all self-contained and hosted off the server itself, so that this will be available. So then there's a whole bunch of things you can do. You have all of these different commands. So if you have a device that needs a line feed to process the command, you can drop in the line feed and you can say show code. And then you can see it puts the line feed designator over here. If you want to look at what everything does, just hit the help and you can scroll through the help and look at how the syntax works. Then if you want to do something like a delay, you just grab a delay in there, drop it in, put in a 1 second delay, message in. Message, tell them perform the self-test. But anything you want to put in there for user messages, you can do some if-thens, and I'll get into some more advanced things. Do the hello world example, right? You can do some loopings, so you could tell it to stay in a status until something happens. We've got a lot of things you can do with it like this. Bring it back. If I can get it to work right. We only want the third field. That will just return back the third field as the result. And then say maybe just one more example in here. We've got a multiply. And then there's a whole bunch of other things we can do with math where we can, grab a value, store it, bring it back to do something with. And then we've got some other commands that we can do where we can get a trace average, get a trace min, so there's a lot of things that we can do. We even added read back the time scale from the device under test. So you bring that back, put it in a variable, and then you'd get your crossing point. And now you got to do some yes, no questions, enter a number. So there's a lot of things that we can do. And, a lot of this is just playing with things to figure out stuff. So that pretty much covers everything related to adding product lines, model numbers, options, building out your first test package in Metrology.net, adding in the test groups, the test points, and then coming in and doing your scripting if it's a controllable instrument using VISAScripts. There'll be more in additional videos to follow, so stay tuned.